Welcome to another episode of Bible Conversations. Today we're going to be continuing our series on characters of Proverbs and discussing the prudent man. All right, well, let's get going on another week. I'm kind of ready to jump right into this.
I am too.
I don't know if I got a good night's sleep last night or something, but I'm full of energy and ready to talk.
I think as ministers, we have to be ready to talk, don't we?
Yeah, that's true.
I got back from ministers retreat on Monday, and one of the comments that was made was, I don't know how any of y'all get in a word in edgewise. You're all preachers. And I said, well, we just take turns listening. And so
I don't know if it's so much taking turns listening or if it's taking turns
waiting
to talk, but thinking about what you're going to say while somebody else is talking.
That is a part of it. So anyway, the prudent, right? And the prudent person, the prudent man, the prudent woman, the prudent individual, the prudent child, whatever. Yeah. The prudent. Yeah. What does the word prudent even mean?
Well, that's actually kind of where I wanted to start. Yeah. Because sometimes when you just think about someone who is prudent, a lot of times it's like a synonym. Not a cinnamon, but a synonym.
I do like cinnamon, though.
It's a synonym of wisdom, right?
Yeah.
Like you think like being prudent and being wise are kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
But they're very different, actually.
They go hand in hand.
They do go hand in hand.
Yeah.
So I guess that's kind of like a lot like wisdom and knowledge.
Yes.
That go hand in hand, but do really have very different definitions. Yeah.
So Proverbs 8:12 actually talks about that. It says, "I, wisdom, dwell with prudence." Yeah. And I find knowledge and discretion, right? Yep. So it's all very much tied together, but there are subtle differences between them.
Yep.
So prudent, the prudent person, and prudent itself means the ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason. So it's the application of that wisdom, the application of that knowledge, and it's really a self-control that you have.
So a definition I found to add to it that really goes with that self-control actually talked about I guess thinking of and looking to the future as you make decisions today. Yeah. Which goes along with that self-control. Having things in mind for a later date in order to be self-controlled in the moment.
Yeah. Well, I've got two more definitions. I would love to hear yours. I'm excited about that, actually. But the ability to govern and discipline oneself by the use of reason, well, it means that you're not so emotional that you're making decisions or doing things because of your emotions. Yep. You're not so logical that you're unwilling to make certain decisions, or you know what I mean? You're able to govern and discipline yourself by reason. Yeah. And I think that's important. So what was the definition you had?
So the one I have is acting with or showing care and thought for the future.
Huh. Okay.
Other words that go along with it is commonsensical. Forethoughtful, well judged.
Some of those words just seem fake,
right? Commonsensical. But obviously, dictionary uses it in a sentence. But no prudent money manager would authorize a loan without first knowing its purpose. In other words, you're considering the future. Yeah. You're having forethought in what you're doing in the moment.
Yeah. So the other two I've got. The second one is skill and good judgment in the use of your resources.
Yeah.
So being able to know what you have and how you can use it, and then doing so.
Yeah.
And then the third one is, and I really like this one. It is caution or circumspection as to danger or risk. So it's being aware.
I like that.
Of what is around you, and specifically as we talk about sin, or we talk about things that might entrap us, right? Yeah. Well, it's caution.
And that word circumspection,
you
can kind of break that down. It's a circle. That's where we get the word circumcised from as well.
All around, 360.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's to danger or risk. So there's some synonyms, not cinnamons, but some synonyms that are carefulness, caution, and wariness. And the proverb that I think best goes along with that third definition, that caution, the circumspection, and danger, is Proverbs 27:12. It says, "The prudent sees danger and hides himself, but the simple go on and suffer for it." So as I read that, man, I try to like, oh man, I try to have like a live action movie playing in my head, right? Of how would this play out of this particular proverb. And so I think of two men. Mm-hmm. And these two men are in, let's say they're in the wilderness, and they're walking along, and they don't know that the other's there. They're just going along two different parts of the wilderness, and one of them sees ahead, is looking around, is paying attention because he's in the wilderness, so he's paying attention, and he's looking not only to see the things around him, but he's looking for danger. He's making sure he's safe, and so he sees in the distance, he sees a lion, and he sees a lion crouching. And so instead of continuing on the path, he goes and he hides himself, and he takes care until he sees the lion has moved on or is chasing something else. Well, the simple man who's walking along a different path is going, and he goes and he doesn't see the lion because he's so busy looking at the other things without really paying attention to what it might mean. He's just walking along.
He's simple.
Yeah, he's just simple, right?
Yeah.
Well, he continues on the path, and guess what happens to the simple man?
The lion gets him.
Nom, nom, nom. Right? Like, he doesn't live. He doesn't make it. And so as we think about that in regards to sin and to our lives today, the prudent individual is going to be going through life aware that, man, there are dangers out there. There are things in this life that can cause me to stumble, can cause me to fall, and I need to be on the lookout for those. I need to be attentive to those. I need to be aware that they're out there, and if I see them coming, there's a couple scriptures, flee.
Yeah.
Flee from these things. Well, that's the prudent man is going to go hide himself. He's going to avoid those things.
The prudent man first is going to be on the lookout and aware, and then go hide himself. Yeah,
exactly.
Then is going to take action based on the knowledge that he has gleaned because he exercised his prudence.
Yeah, and the simple man is not. The
Yeah.
simple man's gonna walk through life not paying attention to the dangers or potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
Is not going to notice that there's a slippery slope with certain things. Is not going to notice that there's a cliff just in front of them. Is not going to notice these traps that Satan has placed in front of him, and is going to fall into every one of them.
Yeah.
And that's it's an interesting thought when you consider that the prudent hides from danger.
Yep.
Because he's trying to protect his soul.
Yep.
And so we have to make sure that we do that.
Now, to just play a little
a devil's advocate.
Yeah, I mean,
I hate to advocate for Satan.
Okay, that's why I hate to use that phrase.
Yeah.
But also, it's not really like I'm trying to argue the opposite side here.
But to present a different viewpoint.
But to present a different viewpoint.
Yeah.
I think there can be times when we almost become too questioning of the world around us.
For sure, and too cautious.
Too cautious.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is, we are called to be in the world, but not of the world.
Yes.
To be in the world does not mean that you're, turning around, looking over your shoulder at every single moment. We live in a world that's fallen and broken, and we have to be okay with that without thinking that, like, everybody's always out to get me.
Correct.
Now, to go along with that, Jesus tells us that we are to be like little children. Now, little children are very much
trusting.
Yeah. They're very much reliant. Now, our reliance should be on God.
Yes.
Not on man. But I think that's where wisdom and prudence go hand in hand.
Well,
because if we are only relying on our own prudence, then we have no trust in God.
Correct.
If we are wise in the use of our prudence and the use of the knowledge that the prudence gains us, then that's when we're really following what God has laid out for us.
Yeah.
So,
well, and Jesus also says we need to be wise as serpents and innocent as doves, right?
Yeah.
So there is that balance, right? And we have to have that balance. And I think often we confuse the idea of caution with inaction.
Yeah.
And caution is not inaction, right? Remember, and even in the little story in my mind, right? Well, the man waited until the danger was past, and then continued.
Yeah.
We can't stop what we're doing because something might be out there.
Exactly.
We have to be aware that things are out there.
That's kind of the point that I'm trying to get at.
Things are out there, but that we still have a mission.
Exactly.
We still have a responsibility. We still have a job as Christians.
Yep.
And so I think it is important that we don't allow fear to sideline us.
Exactly.
Right? That we don't put ourselves on the injured reserve because we might break an ankle.
Don't let your prudence and awareness and knowledge of life and circumstances around you cause you to fall into fear.
Yeah, don't let it become a hindrance.
Yeah, just because you know Satan's out to get you does not mean for a second you should be afraid of him.
Exactly. And so that kind of goes right along with Proverbs 13:16. In everything, the prudent acts with knowledge. And that word there, acts, I think is critical to it. The prudent acts with knowledge, but a fool flaunts his folly. You know, we often consider, or at least I often consider, whether or not what I'm saying is braggadocious, whether what I'm saying is humble, whether I am, in fact, I was going to send an email earlier this week, and almost all of my emails that go to a particular group or I have Alyssa read. I say, hey, does this sound okay?
Read over it real quick. Yeah.
Is this good? Like, is there anything I need to change?
Yep. I have our secretaries do that a whole bunch before I send out a mass email.
Yes.
Yep.
And so she sent back and she said, well, you're talking about this and it seems a little braggy. In my mind, I wasn't at all trying to be braggy.
Yeah.
I was trying to make a point, but I read through it again and I was like,
yeah. Okay. Texting's the same way. That's the downside of the world that we live in today, the way that we communicate today, is that you can't read tone over text.
You can't.
Little side note, I'm going to chase a rabbit, but it was kind of funny. I was texting my mom the other day. Yeah. It was actually like in a group chat with my whole family. And, like nowadays, if somebody ends every sentence of a text, like they text you like 3 sentences in one text and they end every sentence in a period.
Yeah. They're angry.
Yeah,
they're upset.
That's what I'm saying. It seems like they're giving you attitude, right? Yeah. That's what I told my mom. Yeah. She was texting about something. I don't even remember what it was, but it was like a 3-sentence text, and she ended every sentence with just a period. And I was like, okay, Miss Attitude.
Yeah. Right.
And obviously, my mom's from the generation where punctuation is important, and that's the appropriate punctuation for what she was saying. Yeah. And so my brother had to explain to her, periods nowadays are attitude. Yeah. Exclamation point is exciting, and there's no in between.
And there isn't. There might maybe an emoji, right, that could indicate like a
exactly
or something.
Yeah. But anyways, that's just the world that we live in today. Is you cannot read into anybody's tone, and it's incredibly difficult to try to convey tone when you're just sending an email or a text.
Exactly. Well, and so I've got to be very careful about what I say and how I speak, right? And not only because I'm a Christian, I live in a glass house or I live in a glass bowl because of that, but I'm also a minister, right? Yep. So there's part of that, and you understand that.
Yep.
Well, but the idea here that the fool flaunts his folly. How many times, and this is more of a rhetorical question, especially for those of you guys listening, how many times have you heard someone talk about their past sin and there was no remorse coming from their discussion? They were almost talking about it and reminiscing on it as if it was something they wish they could go back to.
Yeah, as if it was like here's the terrible life that I lived and why you shouldn't fall back into it.
Man, I had so much fun.
But
yeah, right? Like, and that happens, doesn't it?
Yep.
And that's foolish, because we're talking about sinning. We're talking about going against God. We're talking about disobeying His will. And here we are. And I know I have been a part of this too, right? Saying, man, I had so much fun when I did that, but it's awful. It's terrible. So you shouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Well, what kind of that's like asking someone to try some food and you're like, dude, it's awful and terrible and it smells awful, but here, try it.
Yeah.
Like it's backwards. Like that's not, if you want someone to try food, you tell them it's good. If you want someone to stop doing something, you tell them it's bad.
Yep.
There can be no opposite to that.
Yep.
And so I think the idea there that the prudent
flaunts his folly.
Well, the fool flaunts his folly. The prudent acts.
Yeah.
The prudent acts with knowledge.
Yep.
And isn't concerned about what it may look like or see or any of it. Is just simply doing what is right because it's according to God's will. So I think there's a whole lot more proverbs that go along with the prudent. We don't have time to get into all of them today, but I think there was a a parable or a story that you were wanting to share that I actually have already had written down in my notes, which is it's almost like we're talking about the same character today. But I'll let you go ahead and read it, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah, Luke chapter 14 is where it comes from, actually, and Jesus is doesn't use the word prudent and doesn't tell people that they should be prudent, but he's saying the exact same kind of thought process. Luke chapter 14. I'll go ahead and start in verse 25 and just read through it. It's not too long.
Yeah.
It says, "Now great crowds accompanied him, and he turned and said to them, 'If anyone comes to me and does not hate his own father and mother and wife and children and brothers and sisters, yes, even his own life, he cannot be my disciple. Whoever does not bear his own cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. For which of you, desiring to build a tower, does not first sit down and count the cost, whether he has enough to complete it? Otherwise, when he has laid the foundation and is not able to finish, all who see it begin to mock him, saying, This man began to build and was not able to finish. Or what king, going out to encounter another king in war, will not sit down first and deliberate whether he is able to with 10,000 to meet him who comes against him with 20,000. And if not, while the other is yet a great way off, he sends a delegation and asks for terms of peace. So, therefore, any of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple." Jesus is saying you have to count the cost. You have to consider the risks. You have to weigh the effect that this is going to have on your life, because if you truly are a follower of mine, it's going to have an effect on your life.
It should.
If it doesn't,
then you're not.
Exactly. That's kind of what Jesus is saying. There's a lot of people following him, and Jesus says, if you're truly going to stick with me, then this is going to change your life. Yeah. Not in this is going to like change your eternal life, which absolutely, yes, it does. Yeah. But it's going to change your life today. Yeah. People are going to see you differently. People are going to treat you differently. Yeah. And so you better weigh the costs. Yeah. Count the costs. And so Jesus is telling his followers, you need to exercise some prudence here. You have to understand what you're getting into. Absolutely. Do I think you should follow Jesus? Absolutely. But you got to count the cost. This isn't going to be something that's easy.
Correct. And I think, I love the analogy he uses, one, building a tower. I mean, haven't you always wanted to build a tower?
Right.
Like, be great, just have like a tower in your backyard of stone.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It was really cool. One time I was on a mission trip in high school, and youth minister used it as an analogy, but there was a unfinished building in the place that we went for our mission trip, and quite literally like unfinished, abandoned. Like the owner of the building ran out of money halfway through building it. He did not count the cost, or if he did, he was terrible at math.
He counted incorrectly.
And and the building got halfway built and then stopped, and it was abandoned. It's been like that for decades. Yeah. And it's a prime example of, wow, that's exactly what Jesus is talking about.
Yeah. Well, and not only, so say we go and decide that we're going to build a new church building somewhere. Yeah. Right.
Plan a church.
Yeah, we plan a church. And we plan out all the building costs, the materials, the cost of land, all of that. But we don't factor in any potential extra things that may happen. Mm-hmm. Well, if something extra happens, just one extra thing, we're out of luck. Yep. So part of that planning is also planning for potential mishaps, potential hazards, potential flooding, potential whatever. And I think we sometimes miss that in our daily lives. Yeah. We only plan for, I've got an appointment at 10:30. The drive is 30 minutes. I'm going to leave at 10. Yeah. It's probably not ideal. Yeah. Because if you're in 1 minute of traffic, you're technically late, right? Like we have to make sure that we're planning for things to go wrong in a sense.
And I think, we struggle with that just in daily life. Yeah. But at the same time, that's even a principle that folks who are not followers of Christ use. That there's examples like this all the time that are instructing people to count the cost, to be prudent in the the use of whatever. There's a story told actually on a TV show about an architect who set out to build a library. It was a big project, first big project he ever got assigned, and everything was perfect. He planned out all of the structure, the build. It was planned out perfectly. Yeah. But then, as they started to open up the library, and in the following months, the library began to collapse and to fall inside. And the architect was like, "What is going on? This was structurally perfect. It was sound. It was literally just perfect." He forgot to account for the weight of the books. Oh, because it was a library. Yeah, and there's tons and tons of books in there. Yeah, there's a lot of people who forget to account for the weight of the books in their life. Yeah. But what's even worse is when we forget to account for the weight of the books in our spiritual life. Yeah. Because sometimes we'll say, okay, following Jesus, that means that, I'm not going to do this sin. I'm not going to do this sin. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to steal. Yeah. I'm not going to do X, Y, Z. But we forget to account for the weight of the books in that it's more than just what I don't do. It's what I should do. Yeah. Well, and even those things that we know we're not supposed to do, when it comes time to make that decision, mm-hmm. it's a lot harder when you're in the moment to choose not to sin than it is if you've already made that choice. Exactly. And so if we are saying that we are Christians, well, then all of those decisions ought to be made well beforehand, right? Well, okay, I'm not going to go in and steal. And you go up and, as a teenager, you're with your friends at the mall, and they say, hey, let's just take this. Take this new video game. Take this new shirt. Take this whatever. Nobody will notice. It's just a little thing. Well, if you've already made that decision, the answer is no, right? Mm-hmm. If it's regarding, premarital relations, well, if you've already made that decision, the answer is still hard in the moment, but the answer is still no. It's the same answer. It's the same answer. And so we have to make sure that we are counting the cost spiritually, mm-hmm. and that we make all of those decisions beforehand, so that when it comes time to decide in real time, the decision's already made. We simply have to follow through. Exactly. So, well, I don't know that I have too much else. I could probably tell stories and go on for a while. As you can tell, I've already had a lot of stories about this, but I think people are getting the point. Yes, I hope so. Yeah, right. I hope so. That's kind of the point of this podcast. But no, to have knowledge is one thing. To have wisdom is another, and that's fantastic. But when you talk about the day-to-day life as a Christian, you have to be prudent in the use of your time, prudent in the actions that you take. It's a more of a day-to-day thing than just being knowledgeable or having wisdom in general. You got to be aware of your surroundings. Yeah. You got to be counting the cost of the things that you're doing. Yeah. And you've got to flee from the things that are bad. Yeah. So anyway, I appreciate you talking about this. I'm gonna let you close us out here in a second. I think you opened us up, so I'll let you close us out. Alrighty. Well, we appreciate everyone joining us this week. Please come back as always on Fridays for our full episodes, and each Monday, don't forget we have our conversation starters that come out as we're going through the devotional book called Make a Change. So join us for those on Mondays and full episodes on Fridays. Thank y'all. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Bible Conversations. We want to ask if you have any questions, suggestions, or comments that you please email us at kcocbibleconversations@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media. We've got a Facebook page as well as an Instagram account. Our Facebook page is very simple. It's just Bible Conversations. On Instagram, it's very simple, @Bible Conversations. Look us up, like our posts, and share it with your friends. We also have an opportunity for you to help us financially through a store via Kim's Closet, and you can find that. You can just type into Google Kim's Closet. We have a link as well that we will be
posting in each of our episodes, and we just hope that you will reach out and find us and purchase a hoodie or a shirt with the logo on it, and that way you can spread the word without having to say a word. So we appreciate you. Thank you all. Have a blessed week.